everyone, it's Leanne here. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to share with you another card created using the Frosty Fairy Friends stamp set from Lawn Fawn, and this is new for the 2016 holiday season. And I will link another video after at the end of this video if you'd like to check another version out. So I have an A2 card size base to start and the same size cut out of watercolor paper. And then I have a slice of vellum that's a little bit wider than the card. I'm going to use that for the sentiment. I have a spare piece of Nina Solar White cardstock for stamping my elements. And then these are the Frosty Fairy Friends, the stamp set from Lawn Fawn. So I'm going to begin with my background. I'm just post-it taping that down and preparing this with just some, I'm going to emboss. So I'm going to use some kitchen flour just so it doesn't, or it prevents the embossing from sticking. So I'm using Versamark for the ink and just white Recollections embossing powder. So I'm going to use the evergreen branches from the Frosty Fairy Friends stamp set, and I'm going to bring those branches in around the outside of the card as if you're peeking through the branches and the branches are sort of encompassing the fairy that'll be in the middle. It was hard to see when I'm stamping, so I didn't include all the stamping, but you'll see it after I do the embossing and the ink resist technique that will be in the background. I'm using the smaller evergreen as well, and I'm putting that in between the bigger branches, just sort of balancing it out and bringing those branches in from the outside edge, from the left, the right, and the top part of the page. So I put my embossing powder on here, and I put that under my heat gun to emboss it just so I could see what I was doing. And then I came back and did the snowflakes here, doing the same technique. Just, you can sort of see it there. There's all the snowflakes. There's 3 sizes that I used from the stamp set. So for the watercolor, I'm using this number 8 round Grumbacher brush. And then this Cotman and watercolor brush is like a mop brush. And I'm going to use this to wet the watercolor paper first. I really want the ink to move around. So the inks I'm using are Cracked Pistachio, Tattered Rose, Picked Raspberry, and Wilted Violet, and these can behave as watercolors. So I'm just smushing those onto my artist palette there on the right. I've added some water to my brush, and I'm just putting them on the watercolor paper. I'm doing it sort of in a quad formation, so each corner has one of those colors. And as they come towards the center of the card, they blend with the edges of the 2 adjoining colors near them. And these colors remind me of the colors of lights that you might put on your Christmas tree. And so these aren't traditional Christmas colors, but they still give that essence of Christmas because you always have the colored lights and they're really fun to see. So my impression of this is that you're peeking through the branches at the Christmas tree, and that's where the fairy is. So this I've set aside to dry. And I've just touched up the corner. I had a little ballooning on the color, so I came back in with a damp brush and just pushed that color out, and that's super easy to do even after it's dry. So I've laid out this vellum and marked the center there at the top, and I did a sample stamp of the sentiment because I need to build this separately. So I'm using that as a guide to know where to place the stamps. I'm using VersaFine ink in Onyx Black. And so referencing that guide at the right, that will show me the level of where I need to put each line to make sure that it's centered vertically on the vellum piece. And I'm going to emboss this as well. That's why I'm using the VersaFine ink. So have a Fairy Magical Christmas. And then I'm sprinkling this with clear embossing powder. And then I'll zap that with my heat gun as well. So now I'm going to use Memento Tuxedo Black ink to stamp the fairy. And then I'm going to come in and color this with Copic markers. So I'm using this purple tone, or this set of purple tones. So doing sort of a purple velvet dress on my fairy. And I'm going to color in the arms too. She doesn't really seem to have sleeves, but I live in Canada and winter's really cold, so I wouldn't send a fairy outside without any sleeves on her dress. So I will come back and color that purple. And I'm coloring the headband as well on her earmuffs to match. Now I'm using this YG11 for the wings. This is sort of to tie in that Cracked Pistachio from the background color. And I really like this color. It's nice and light. And any light Copic markers you have make really pretty fairy wing colors. So for the skin, I'm laying down E00 and then coming in with E11 as the shadow underneath the hairline. And then I'll just come back in with my light color again, that E00, and blend that out, blend out that shadow line. And I do this technique with all the colors that I create. So for the hair, I want to do a brunette. I'm using E13 as the base, and I'm using that to mark out the lines where the crown of the hair is and where the highlight will fall. And then I'm coming in with E18 and going over the same areas in the same way. If there's anything I'm doing different, it would just be to make the lines a little bit more farther apart so you see some of that base color shine through, and maybe making the secondary color, the little bit darker color here, the E18, just a little bit shorter on those wispy lines. And that's again so that that base color can show through. So you can show the levels and the building of the color. You don't want to totally cover up what you put down the first time. And so then coming in with the E79, this is just to really darken the shadows, darken where the crown of the hair comes out and around the perimeter of the head. So around the curvature of the outside of the hair is going to be darker as well. It's going to be in shadow. And then I came in with E18 and just cleaned up some of the white paper coming through because it's a brunette, it's a darker shade, so we don't need to leave the white. If you were doing blonde hair, you could leave the white of the paper, and that would look really nice too. So I'm doing the shadows on the white parts of the costume with R20 as the shadow color, and then I'm just blending it into the white with the colorless blender. So this way it sort of gives a color tinge to a white object, but you're not having to paint it a color, a total color, or leave it stark white. You still want to get those shadows and create that dimension. So that's what I'm doing here. And just wherever the shadows would fall, just one simple layer and then a quick wash of the colorless blender to just bleed those lines a bit. And then I came in with the E23 to color her booties, but you could use any color you have. Now I found that her sitting on that background was a little dwarfing. It was really big, and so I had this black paper that was cut down a half an inch off the height and the width. So I decided to cheat and use that as a guide to trim off a 1/4 inch around the entire perimeter of my background. And so I just put that down. I eyeball centered it and then came in with my metal ruler and just trimmed off each edge. So this way when I put it on my cardstock, on my card backing, I'll have a white border that trims it. And then the fairy won't feel so dwarfed in that scene because the background won't be so big compared to her being little. And so here I'm sort of putting it together to check everything, and I really like this better. I think this works well. So I'm going to add some tape to the back of my sentiment with my tape roller, and then finding the center of the card at the bottom, just tacking that into place. And I will share a tip with you to bend that vellum to make sure that it doesn't crack. If you were to just fold it, it would crack. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking the back of a box cutter and slightly scoring that edge where I want it to fold around the card. And that way, by creating that score, I'm not cutting it all the way through, but I'm weakening the paper at that point. And then that way I can get a nice, crisp, clean edge folded around the card. And then you don't get those white lines that you would get with vellum. You can see the score there. So then when I fold that over, it's a nice clean fold and sits really flush to the card. So that's my design tip for you guys. That's a little secret I learned in design school. So I just put some tape roller on the edges of those flaps too, and that's attached. Now I'm going to add my tape roller along the back. I usually go around 4 sides and then an X. And then I'm just going to eyeball this onto my card base. And I'm doing a side folded card here, but you could do top folded as well. So I'm just finding the center and then pushing that down into place. And that's all secure and good. So I'm going to put my fairy on now, and I'm going to use foam tape because I love foam tape. And she's the focal point of the scene, so it's great to have her on foam tape and just sort of rising up a little bit out of the scene. So I've put her in the center, and then these little tendrils, I found those in the stamp set as well, and they kind of create movement, so I decided to stamp those just coming out from behind her as if she's flying through the scene and kind of emulates her flying a little bit. And to finish it off, I'm coming in with my Wink of Stella brush pen in clear glitter and just giving some sparkle to those wings because Every fairy I color just needs sparkle. So there you have it. This is my Frosty Fairy Friends card using the same stamp set from Lawn Fawn. Here's another video too if you guys would like to check this out using that same stamp set. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified the next time I post a video. Thanks for watching.